Are you struggling to come up with original content week in and week out? Start a podcast. Interview your ideal clients, let them talk about what they care about most, and never run out of content ideas again. Learn more at sweetfishmedia.com.
You're listening to B2B Growth, a daily podcast for B2B leaders. We've interviewed names you've probably heard before, like Gary Vaynerchuk and Simon Sinek, but you've probably never heard from the majority of our guests. That's because the bulk of our interviews aren't with professional speakers and authors. Most of our guests are in the trenches leading sales and marketing teams. They're implementing strategy. They're experimenting with tactics. They're building the fastest growing B2B companies in the world. My name is James Carberry. I'm the founder of Sweetfish Media, a podcast agency for B2B brands, and I'm also one of the co-hosts of this show. When we're not interviewing sales and marketing leaders, you'll hear stories from behind the scenes of our own business. We'll share the ups and downs of our journey as we attempt to take over the world. Just kidding. Well, maybe. Let's get into the show.
Welcome back to B2B Growth. I am your host for today's episode, Nikki Ivy with Sweetfish Media. I've got with me today David Henzel, CEO of Task Drive. David, how are you doing today?
I'm doing excellent. Thank you very much for having me on the show.
Ooh, excellent. I love enthusiasm in the morning. So we are going to be talking about how to do targeted prospecting without being annoying and spamming people, which is the topic I'm super excited to hear you talk about. And then a couple other little things about how to sell from love and not fear, which I think is going to be really impactful. But before we get to any of that, I would love it, David, if you would just give us a little bit of background on yourself and what you and the folks at Task Drive have been up to these days.
Sure. We at Task Drive, we provide sales development as a service. Basically, we start sales conversations between B2B companies and their Dream 100 customers, so their ideal customers. Our mission is to give sales and marketing people superpowers by taking away the legwork so they can focus on high value activities, basically talking to prospects, talking to customers versus doing the legwork. And we do this by finding the right prospects, by doing the research, and by then doing the outreach for you by connecting on LinkedIn or sending emails. In a nutshell, this is what we do. I'm originally from Germany. I've been an entrepreneur for over 20 years. I don't even know how many businesses I had. I lived in Los Angeles for 8 years. My last business was MaxCDN, a content delivery network, which we sold 3 years ago. We moved back to Europe, and I thought I'll early retire, but I got really, really bored and went back into business. And this is what we're doing right now.
Yeah, thank you for that. There's a lot of cool stuff in there. Giving salespeople superpowers. Sign me up. Also, yes, you are from Germany. I love your accent. I grew up an Army brat, so I'm always picking up on people's accents, and I'm jealous of everyone who has one.
I really want to get rid of my accent, but it didn't work. 8 years of LA did not help.
Thank goodness it didn't work. So again, we're going to be talking about how to do targeted B2B prospecting or B2B outreach without spamming people. Give just a quick little overview of some of the examples that you see out there or have seen of spamming and what maybe made you interested or passionate about, seeing what you could do to get rid of that tactic.
Well, back in the days, a few years ago, you could literally just email people an email like, hey, buy my stuff email, and convert and get meetings out of this. But these days, this doesn't really work anymore. And maybe a little bit about the history of Task Drive and why we started this. At MaxCDN, we had a pretty big sales force, and we were Los Angeles based. So we had our sales guys, sitting there reaching out to customers, and they were all high-paid sales executives. And we came across Aaron Ross, who wrote the book Predictable Revenue, and he came up with this sales development outreach idea that before you had like one sales guy doing everything, kind of finding the prospect, closing the prospect, and then doing the account management. And he split it up into 3 disciplines. One is the sales development rep who does the research and the outreach. Then you have the closer who, closes the customer. Then you have the account management who does the account management. And this worked really, really well for us at MaxCDN. And we introduced a 4th discipline, which is the researcher, into this game to make the SDRs who do the outreach even more effective. Yeah, this worked so well for us that my business partner at MaxCDN, Samir, he left MaxCDN early because he was so obsessed with this idea that he started Task Drive. And now, as I told you, after the sale of MaxDN, I got bored, and Samir didn't want to do Task Drive anymore. He just wanted to play in the stock market, so I acquired Task Drive from him. And yeah, so your question about being less annoying and being really targeted, I think if you just pray and spray and just email or contact random people, first of all, it doesn't work anymore because nobody responds. There's too much outreach going on. Second of all, Google and a lot of email providers got very, very good at filtering out mass messages, so you can't come through anymore. And I think it's literally spamming if you don't reach out to somebody who really can use your product. So you have to do the research on finding the people that actually can really benefit from your product. Kind of going to the thing that you already mentioned, selling out of love versus selling out of fear. If I'm selling because I really want to help a person to do better in business or do better personally or whatever, if I want to improve this person's life, then I'm selling out of love and not out of fear. If I'm selling out of fear, I'm just thinking about the quota that I have to reach or my mortgage that I have to pay. And if you're in this mindset, you're going to have a much harder time versus when you're selling out of love.
Yeah, there's a lot in there. I do want to I want to make sure we highlight this point, right? A lot of people think about spamming in terms of the volume of outreach that they're doing, right? But like you mentioned, it is spam if it's not researched. It is spam if it doesn't matter if it's just one person. You can spam sending just one email, right? If it's, vague and sort of selfish enough. So I think that's key, right? To remember that it's not just the volume with which you do the outreach. You also mentioned you guys add in the fourth discipline of research to the SDR, closer, account manager sort of approach. And I think that that's one of the things that helps with one of the points that we talked about offline, which is playing the long game. Talk a little bit about what that fourth discipline does to support the SDR role that you mentioned.
So when you have a researcher in the mix, then this person can really focus on the research and find the nuggets that you need to make this outreach personalized to the person that you're reaching out to. You're going to have a much higher conversion rate if you really personalize, first of all, finding the right person that can need it. And then second of all, write the email in a way that's personalized towards their pain points or towards them personally. So they feel more incentivized to respond.
All right, today's growth story is about search engine marketing. Clear Company is an HR tech company that was doing a lot of things right. Their messaging was clear, their product produced incredible results, but they were struggling to drive qualified traffic to their website. Then they found Directive Consulting, a B2B search marketing agency. Within the first 12 months of working with Directive, Clear Company was able to increase their qualified lead volume by 157%. I have a hunch that Directive can get these kind of results for you too. So head over to directiveconsulting.com and request a totally free custom proposal. That's directiveconsulting.com. All right, let's get back to this interview.
With omnichannel outreach, how do you, and the types of things that you're talking about with the four-pronged approach and the efforts of not spamming, how do we make it feel natural?
Maybe kind of going back to the long game, there's one way how you can reach out to somebody and you just sell, straight up sell. You reach out to a prospect who could buy your product. But something that has been very effective for me is reaching out to multipliers and building these win-win-win relationships with multipliers. So this could be somebody who has an audience who could need your product, so they can become a multiplier for you. And so at MaxDN, we did this. MaxDN was a content delivery network. We make websites load faster. So we reached out to, for example, W3 Total Cache, which is a caching plugin for WordPress. And people who install this plugin want to make their sites faster. And then we reached out to him, built a relationship with him, and got him to build an integration for MaxDN. So it's very easy for his customers to use our product. And so it was a win-win-win situation because we got a customer, he got a kickback from us for bringing us customers, and his customers had the benefit of having their sites much faster with a lot less hassle. So there's lots of ways how you can do outreach in this sense, and also providing value to the person that you reach out to, not necessarily just the value by having the right product for him, but maybe reaching out to somebody and doing a roundup post. You reach out to industry experts that work for your ideal customer, and you say like, hey, we're doing a roundup post about XYZ topic. We'd like to have a 50-minute call with you to interview you, and then we put this into this blog post, and you get the exposure of, being listed as one of the experts that's in there. Mm-hmm. And the long game idea of this is that you talk to somebody who's your ideal customer, you build a relationship with them. During this process, they will definitely, deal with you and look at what you're doing. And then it's a very easy thing that this can lead into a sale later on. If you have the stamina and the willingness to really play a long game and build these relationships with these people.
For sure. I mean, that rings true, definitely to my experience. Relationships are revenue. It's a mantra of mine. And it's because it's absolutely true that if you focus on the person, the individual behind whatever the persona is that you're trying to reach out to, it not only does it okay, you're going to have more likelihood of getting entry into this organization and obtaining your goal, it just makes it more fun, right? That's how it feels natural, because I think that we naturally as human beings want to relate to each other. And so taking a relationship approach makes it a lot less, mundane to get the job done. And that's how we go back to this overarching idea of selling out of love and not fear. Another thing that you and I talked about offline that shocked me, as you said that you did have a fear before, or an apprehension about talking to people and doing podcasts like this and speaking engagements, but you were able to go from an introvert to an extrovert. I, like I mentioned before, could probably stand to go a little bit the other direction, but teach us your ways. Talk to us, David, about how that helped you, why you feel like you need to do it, and how folks can try that for themselves.
Yeah, I used to be very introverted. Like even being on a conference call made me extremely uncomfortable, especially, I always thought I always made about me, acting again, kind of going to acting out of fear. They thought do people think I have a weird accent? Do people think I'm an idiot? Do people think what I'm saying is not right, or whatever? Kind of always this making about me. And this really, was a big roadblock in my mind, because I made it about me, because I was acting out of fear. And, same with public speaking. A few years ago, I would have never gone up on stage and gave a speech. I would have preferred to shoot myself in the face. But, because I always made it about me, but if I make it about the other person, I think okay, what I have to say here can potentially help these people to do their business better, to just improve their life. Then I'm acting out of love, and then it becomes very easy to, I'm not stuck, I'm not frozen. And same thing with selling. If I want to sell you this product here, and I know it's a really good product, it works well, it's good quality, and I know this is the right fit for you, it's going to ease your pain points, then I'm selling out of love because I want to improve your life. Versus if I just think about my numbers, my mortgage, etc., then it that doesn't really work. And I overcame this by doing Toastmasters, public speaking training there, pretty much in every city. Mm-hmm. And I pushed this really hard. I did 2 Toastmasters classes per week, and I went to 2 networking events per week, and I just talked to everybody. And this, kind of exposure therapy. At some point, I didn't care anymore, and then all of a sudden, I realized that it can actually become fun. And the key thing with the love and fear came from my yoga teacher. She said, in the yoga session, she said, every decision in life you either make out of love or out of fear. And this was so impactful for me, because I always knew this deep down inside. I just didn't have I couldn't articulate it. And I almost fell out of downward facing dog because it struck me, so extremely. And, once I found this became my mantra on kind of everything I'm doing, even talking to somebody sitting next to me on the plane, or I meet a random person, I always just ask a few questions, do my best to dig in to find a way that I can provide value to this person, and then everything becomes very easy. And money is a side effect of providing value. And it's the easiest way to build relationships, when your sole goal is to, how can I improve this person's life? How can I help this person? And then, it's so much fun, and it works really, really well.
Well, David, I'm super glad you didn't hurt yourself in Downward Facing Dog. I am also glad you did not shoot yourself in the face, and that you decided to do the speaking engagement instead. And you guys, y'all can't see this. There's my Texas. Y'all can't see this, but in the background, we're on video, and David has a frog meditating. And I happen to have a little statue. It's not an actual frog, because that'd be weird, but he has a statue of a frog meditating, and I have a statue of a cat meditating. So we talked a little bit about about that as it plays into this love versus fear thing. And it has just been, since we started this conversation, really enlightening. And he is as nice as he sounds on this podcast, more than nice, genuine, vulnerable. And I think that as salespeople, as business people, not only are these the sorts of characteristics that we should try and, have in ourselves, but I think the more I can shine a light on business people who have those qualities, the better. So super glad to have you with us today, David. Now that I've gotten to pick your brain a little bit and see what I can get out of it, I am interested in what you put in it. So tell us a little bit about what book you're reading or listening to or blog you engage with. What is speaking to you right now?
I consume a lot of books. I probably consume 2 books per month, and I always consume them on Audible. And it's all business related or personal development related books. And I always listen to them on 1.5 to speed. So it's kind of get used to it. Depending if the person speaks slow, it can be 2x. And this way I can just consume a lot of good information while I walk the dogs, while I drive from A to B, or while I do something where I can't, would waste time otherwise. Mm-hmm. And in terms of the top 3 books that had the biggest impact in my life, actually every time when I hire somebody, I ask them, what is the last book that you've read and what are the top 3 books that had the biggest impact in your life? Because I only want to hire people who work on themselves, who improve themselves, who are, who are in a growth mindset.
Sure.
And for me, the top 3 books are Outwitting the Devil by Napoleon Hill, the guy who wrote Think and Grow Rich. He basically interviews the devil, asking the devil what the devil does to hold us back and make us not reach our goals. And the biggest tool that the devil has is fear, funny enough. And it's a really amazing book. He wrote it in the 1930s or so, or 1950s, and he didn't dare to publish. And it was published 5 years ago after his death because he thought it would be, it was too controversial.
Yeah.
And every Napoleon Hill book, since you're, it's B2B sales focused, you should read every Napoleon Hill book that you can get your hands on. It's really, really amazing.
Sweet. Thank you for sharing that. It's along the lines of a book that I'm reading, Your Future Self Will Thank You. And there are some elements of overcoming, I guess, the devil or whatever forces there are that hold you back. And so it's funny that you would mention that. Everybody listening, I am sure David is going to want to follow along with your progress and what you and the guys at Task Drive are up to, and girls, actually. David shared that they have a heavily female workforce. So woot woot. How can folks connect with you, David?
You can find me on social media. Just search for my name, David Henzel, or email me at david@taskdrive.com. And happy to chat. Please reach out.
Sweet. Thanks again so much for being with us, David. This was an absolute pleasure. Have a good one.
Thank you, Nikki.
We totally get it. We publish a ton of content on this podcast, and it can be a lot to keep up with. That's why we've started the B2B Growth Big 3, a no-fluff email that boils down our 3 biggest takeaways from an entire week of episodes. Sign up today at sweetfishmedia.com/big3. That's sweetfishmedia.com/big3.